Hey guys, it's Sam, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you guys how I drew this picture. Ooh. Now before I get into it, I just want to say this was done live via Twitch. If you'd like to follow me on Twitch, link is in the description. This was a sort of live paint-along tutorial type thing where I went from blank canvas to finished picture and told you guys exactly what I did pretty much as I was doing it. So for those of you guys who missed out on it, I thought I would just take that footage and time-lapse it all together into this tutorial for you guys. So if you notice a giant bar at the bottom and Twitch notifications, I am sorry, but that's why they are there. I'll have the reference photo linked in the description if you would like to follow along. And of course, this tutorial can apply to any sort of reference. It doesn't have to be this particular one. It also doesn't really have to be a person. These techniques and ideas and stuff can work with pretty much any subject. And you can use any digital art program. I used Photoshop, but if you have a mouse and you have MS Paint, you can do a lot of similar stuff. Just look up MS Paint videos on YouTube. You'll be surprised what people can do with it. Anyway, on with this tutorial. Hopefully the bottom bar and the notifications won't be too distracting, but I have a blog post if you would like to read and not have all these flashy things. But anyway, starting off, there's a whole bunch of different ways you could start off by drawing this. You could trace it, you could use grids, you could freehand it, you could do different types of measuring like I'm doing here. I'm doing a mix of like freehanding plus measuring. You don't have to have the reference photo right next to your workspace. You could have it in a separate window, or you can have it just somewhere else. For convenience sake, both on the stream and for this drawing, I just put them in the same document, and that way I could draw a line straight horizontally across just to check my measurement. If you would like, you could also do this vertically, but then you would have to put the reference photo on top of your image and then do vertical lines to check your measurements, or you can check your measurements by overlaying either your sketch or the photograph onto your artwork and see where lines match up and where they don't match up. So in starting this, I pretty much want to observe the reference. Since the size of my canvas is the same as the photo, I can more easily determine where something is in relation to something else. Placement, how far from the edge of the canvas is a landmark that I want to put down, and that's kind of how I start things out. I don't want to worry about details right off the bat because that can get distracting and overwhelming, and if you just start drawing like the little crevices in her lips right off the bat, then it can just get a little bit out there and wild, and it's a lot easier when doing something realistic or something complicated by starting simple shapes, simple like just doing straight lines. You can make it just geometric, or you can make it a little bit more organic. And sorry for some other flashing stuff. Again, this was live. I tried to cut out what I could. But anyway, once that is done, I then move on to getting a base down just to kind of keep my coloring and my shading all together in one thing. Then I can just make a layer with the flats and then just color only on that and not worry about the background. So if you have a background with whatever piece that you're doing, then that just helps keep everything in place. There were quite a few mistakes as I was working on this piece in terms of the sketch, but I ended up just fiddling with that later on since I was a bit lazy. But I do recommend trying to get an accurate sketch, the most accurate sketch as you can as early as possible, just to make things easier down the road. And so for this next part, I'm using strictly the hard round and soft round default brushes in Photoshop, just because I know not everybody has super fancy brushes and everything, and this is totally possible to do with just a normal brush. So starting off with the large soft round brush, I make it very big and I work big to small, and I use straight black and white. I don't color pick because I choose not to, but you are more than welcome to. Also the photograph for the reference is actually not in black and white, so I had to make it in black and white. So I start big and I go to small. So I take the soft round brush and add a bit of transparency on it just to kind of get some grays and other values where the white and the black colors meet. And then I color pick from there. Same with the sketch. You want to worry about, or you don't want to worry about the details. You want to focus on the larger aspects, the more general shapes. And if it helps, you can zoom out, you can blur the reference photo, you can kind of squint at your eyes. You don't want to worry about all the little nooks and crannies. You don't want to worry about her skin texture or anything. You want to kind of think more general. So after I lay down the values, I switch to my hard round brush, and it's a lot easier to just kind of color pick from the color, or quote unquote colors, the grayscale, the grays I already have laid down on the canvas. And then I go in with a bit of a harder brush just to define some more details, get the values in where they're supposed to go, because with the large soft brush, you can't really get too specific with it, and the values kind of get all over the place, so I can get in more accurate details with this harder round brush. It's really about just following along with the reference as best as you can. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful thing ever. Even this artwork, even when it's done, it's very not accurate to the photo. This is just a study. It's all about learning, so don't stress. If you're struggling, just take a break if you need to and come back to it later. And remember that we are all learning, and no worries if things are going to be slightly off. And again, if you need to or if you want to, you can always check your work. You can overlay your drawing over the photograph. You can see how you're doing and go from there. Now for this next part, I am kind of blending everything out. I use the smudge tool, and I have a tutorial on how I use the smudge tool, and I'll put that link in the description down below. I definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you use Photoshop and you have trouble blending. This tool has saved many times for me. It makes it very easy. This is just softening the edges and getting everything a bit more smooth and having smoother transitions for her skin tone. Of course, this isn't a necessary step. If you like things to look a bit more like painterly and digitally painted, you can definitely leave texture down. You don't even have to use the harder, softer brushes. You can use whatever brushes you want and go for a style that works for you. If you don't want to aim for a more realistic thing, that's fine. But pretty much from this point forward, I'm using a mixture of the hard and soft round brushes as well as the smudge tool, and just kind of going in between where I feel like things are needed and just adding more details or making adjustments. And for making adjustments, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, especially with Photoshop. You can use the warp tool, you can use any of the transform tools, which includes the warp tool, but I do like distort. That one's one of my favorites for the transform tool. There's also the liquify tool. You can also repaint things if you want, and just a lot of options. There's more options than that, but those are just the main ones that I like to use. So I would recommend trying out a bunch of different ones and seeing which ones work for you or which ones might work for a certain method or something that you want to do. Just exploring with the program helps a lot. Now with me, because I work on one layer, what I do is I would duplicate that layer, make the adjustments on the layer on top, because any sort of changes you do, there's no pixels to replace them, so you have a gap in your artwork, and just having that copy underneath fills in that gap a little bit more easily. But if you're working on multiple layers, which is fine, and you want to try adjusting something, then I would recommend trying to duplicate those layers and merge them and then mess with things there and then continue on working from there. Or you can copy the file, make a duplicate copy of the file, and then mess with the copy, and you still have the original if something goes wrong or you don't like it or whatever. Now with this, you'll see me flipping the canvas a lot, and this is quite important for all artists, digital, traditional, whatever. It's very helpful in seeing mistakes. Often we'll just get complacent with how things look, and we don't really see everything because we're so used to how something looks that we don't see our mistakes. So flipping it either horizontally or vertically can help better identify those mistakes, and you can fix them and make your artwork even better. And like flipping the canvas, I also recommend taking breaks. I know some of us like to just work nonstop, start to finish, for hours on end, but that can be unhealthy for a multitude of reasons. One, sitting down for too long is not good for our bodies. Two, it's not really good for our hands and wrists to be drawing and having so much tension and pressure on them for so long. So taking breaks is good for your bodily health, but it's also good for your mental health. Sometimes it can just be straining or draining to be working on a piece for so long, but also it is good for our artwork. So like with flipping the canvas, we get fixated and stuck on a certain mindset. Our drawing looks a certain way, and working for it for so long nonstop, we get used to it and complacent, and we don't really realize any mistakes. And flipping the canvas can help with that, but also taking breaks can do that too. If you've ever found yourself really liking a piece as you're working on it, but then after you finish, you're like, oh, this isn't that good. This is often related because we don't notice these mistakes. We're not paying as much attention to our work as we're working on it, over a long period of time. So advice that I had received a while ago was, once you finish a piece, when you feel that you've reached the point of it being done, take a break, sleep on it, and come back to it the next day, and you'll often find additional mistakes or things you want to change, or you might have new ideas, and give your artwork this new fresh sort of look, and you'll be refreshed and able to work on it even better, and then oftentimes your artwork will end up better as a result of having taken that break. But I know that doesn't always work for everybody. Some people are just really headstrong, nonstop wanting to work, and that's okay. 5-minute breaks even in between, maybe getting up, getting a glass of water, because staying hydrated is also important. Anyway, just even 5 minutes, just step away, stretch, that sort of thing. It makes a huge difference. So try and find places and time to take breaks, because they're really important. So for this last part, I'm finally adding in the texture, and I actually have a tutorial on how to do that, and I will link it in the description down below. It's my sparkle tutorial in Photoshop, and you're thinking sparkles, but Sam, you're not adding sparkles, you're adding skin texture, and I know. A lot of my tutorials can be multi-purposed, and my sparkle tutorial is actually fantastic for adding skin texture. Adding in those pores or imperfections, or just anything that kind of makes it a little bit more realistic and lively. Definitely check out that tutorial. It's very simple to do, and yeah, so I like to fiddle with that. I like to fiddle with settings as well, so overlay, soft light. If you have not tried out those layer effects, definitely do it. They're my favorite. You can do a lot with them if you're wanting to adjust values, adjust contrast. Having a soft light or overlay layer makes it so much easier, and you can do your work so much faster. And I actually do that a couple of times with this piece, just to kind of quickly adjust my lights and my darks. And when I do my skin texture, I like to have it on a separate layer just to have the most control over it. So if I want to make adjustments, or if I want to erase certain things, maybe the skin texture is too strong, or maybe I want to change the opacity, or set it to an overlay or soft light layer, that just makes it a bit easier. And then when I'm done and satisfied, then I can merge it all at the end. And so for this last part, this is kind of a do what you want section. Sometimes I like to play around with a bit of texture and just a little flair to kind of make the piece my own, and I was just playing around with what brushes I could find, and it ended up inadvertently looking like hair, which is fine, but I just thought that was funny. So you can go ahead and put your reference photo away and just give your piece the attention and changes or anything that you think that it needs. And as a final note, I also added a bit of noise at the end, where you go to filter, add noise, and just some more texture, a little bit more texture. Totally an optional step, just something I really like doing. I just think it makes the piece a little bit more your own and unique. Alright, so that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys found it helpful. If the pop-ups in the bottom bar and everything was a bit too distracting, I also have a blog post version on my website. I'll put a link in the description if you would prefer to read. And if you guys would like me to do more of these sort of live paint-along tutorials things on Twitch, let me know in the comments down below, and follow me on Twitch so you can catch future live streams. And if you enjoyed this tutorial and you'd like to help me out, you can share this video with your friends or donate via the links in the description to my Patreon or Ko-fi page. Sharing, commenting, likes, donating, all of that stuff is really appreciative, so thank you so much for that. If I leave out anything else, you can always check the description down below. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye!